want to survive the artificial intelligence revolution, the most critical technology you need to master actually isn't Python.
Right.
It isn't, building a neural network, and it certainly isn't learning how to write the perfect prompt for a language model. It's actually an ancient human capacity that, well, in our rush to outcompute the computers, we've almost entirely forgotten. And that is empathy.
Yeah, it's a massive paradigm shift, honestly. We spend so much time obsessing over how to make machines think more like humans, right? But we completely ignore the very trait that keeps humans from acting like machines in the first place.
Exactly. So today's deep dive comes from a really fascinating place. We're unpacking a transcript from a May 2026 sermon. And this was delivered to a youth group in Austin, Texas.
Which is, a major tech hub.
Right, ground zero for this hyper-competitive innovation at all costs mindset. And yet, this speaker stands in front of a room of young adults, people who are literally staring down the barrel of massive career anxiety and these automated futures, and argues that their greatest survival tool is a 2,500-year-old case study in human connection.
It's wild. The historical figure at the center of this is Nehemiah. He's a man who lived during the height of the Persian Empire. And what makes this transcript so compelling to me is that it doesn't treat empathy as some, soft, vague, feel-good emotion.
Right, like just being nice.
Exactly. It actually presents it as a highly structured, three-dimensional architecture for leadership and community building.
Yeah, and our mission today is to break down those three dimensions of empathy that Nehemiah modeled. And more importantly, we really want to figure out how his ancient playbook provides a tangible roadmap for you.
Yeah.
Because if you're listening to this and you're, navigating the sheer dread of being replaced by technology, or you're feeling that intense isolation of modern relationships, this is specifically for you. Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we get to ancient Persia, we need to understand why our modern definition of empathy is just completely broken.
Well, it's broken because we usually reduce empathy down to, like you said earlier, simply being nice or just feeling sad when someone else is sad.
Right.
But the speaker in Austin dismantles that by breaking empathy into three distinct psychological components. They actually draw on some basic personality framework concepts to explain why our brains default to different reactions.
Oh, right, like the Myers-Briggs stuff, the T versus the F brain types.
Precisely. So the first component is cognitive empathy. This aligns with that T, or thinking, preference. It's your ability to look at someone else's crisis purely logically.
Okay.
You understand the context, you see the variables, and your brain just immediately starts running diagnostic tests to find a practical solution.
Which, is incredibly helpful. But if I'm crying about a brutal breakup and my friend instantly hands me a spreadsheet of 5 ways to improve my dating profile, I am going to throw my coffee at them.
Oh, 100%. And that perfectly illustrates why cognitive empathy alone just isn't enough. It's too cold on its own. Which brings us to the second component, emotional empathy.
The F type.
Right, the F, or feeling preference. This is the visceral, contagious sharing of emotion. If someone tells you a tragic story, your mirror neurons fire up, and you are literally shedding tears with them before they even finish the sentence.
Oh, yeah.
You feel the weight of their pain inside your own body.
It's the ultimate validation, really. It makes you feel like you aren't crazy for hurting.
Yeah.
It actually makes me think of an analogy. Imagine your car breaks down on the side of a busy highway.
Oh, I hate that. So stressful.
Right. So cognitive empathy is the mechanic who pulls over, pops the hood, and logically diagnoses that your alternator is shot. Emotional empathy is your best friend who's sitting in the passenger seat with you, holding your hand and validating how terrifying it is to be stranded with these semi-trucks flying past.
That is a brilliant visualization because it highlights the gap that still exists in that scenario. The mechanic diagnosed it, the friend is comforting you, but you're still stuck on the side of a dangerous highway.
Yeah, exactly. Someone needs to actually move the car.
Which is the third component, empathetic action. This is the behavioral response. It's the stranger who pulls over, gets out of their perfectly safe vehicle, walks right into traffic, and physically pushes your car to the nearest exit.
Wow.
And the core argument of this transcript is that to build true resilience, whether that's in an ancient city or a modern tech company, you simply cannot isolate these traits. You need the logic, the emotion, and the physical action acting together as one unified force.
Okay, which perfectly brings us to the Persian palace of Susa, roughly 450 BCE. So Nehemiah is working as the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes. It is a position of immense trust, luxury, total comfort.
Yeah, he's basically the king's right-hand confidant.
Exactly. But one day, some travelers arrive from his ancestral homeland of Judah, and they drop an absolute bomb on him. The people who survive the historical exile are in terrible distress. Jerusalem is in ruins, the walls are completely broken down, and the gates are just reduced to ash.
And to really understand the gravity here, you have to realize that in the ancient world, a city without walls wasn't just like a municipal failure.
Right, it's not just a zoning issue.
No, it was a complete loss of identity, safety, and dignity. It meant literally anyone could raid you, enslave you, or kill you at any moment. Your community is fundamentally defenseless.
It's terrifying. And Nehemiah's immediate reaction isn't to, draft a policy memo. It is intensely physically emotional. The text actually notes that he collapses, he sits down, he weeps, and he mourns for days. He fasts and he prays.
Yeah.
He allows the catastrophic reality of his people's suffering to just completely wreck his nervous system. He exercises pure emotional empathy.
But the thing is, he doesn't stay in his room forever. He eventually has to go back to work. And this is where the historical context really amplifies the stakes. Nehemiah is serving wine to the most powerful monarch on the planet, and the king notices that Nehemiah's face is crestfallen.
Which, just imagine the absolute terror of that moment. I mean, your boss isn't just someone who can give you a bad performance review or fire you.
No.
He's an absolute dictator who can legally have you executed just for bringing a bad vibe into his throne room. Like, you were expected to be perfectly pleasant and radiant in the presence of Persian royalty.
It is entirely a life or death crisis. So the king looks at him and asks, why is your face sad? What are you asking for? The natural human instinct here, which is driven by the amygdala, right, the fear center of the brain, would be to completely panic.
Oh, for sure.
You might lie and say, you just have a stomachache, or you might completely break down and blurt out this frantic, incoherent plea for help. But Nehemiah doesn't do either of those things.
Yeah, the text says he took this tiny micropause. It says, "So I prayed to the God of heaven," and then he answered the king.
Right. And to unpack the mechanics of that specific moment, the speaker in Austin brings in the work of Viktor Frankl.
Oh, the psychiatrist.
Yes, Frankl was a renowned psychiatrist and a Holocaust survivor. He observed human behavior in literally the most horrific conditions imaginable, and he concluded this. He said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response."
I always come back to that quote. It is just the ultimate definition of psychological freedom.
It really is. And what this transcript argues is that Nehemiah utilized that psychological space as a spiritual space. The stimulus was the king's terrifying, potentially lethal question. The response was his answer. But in that tiny millisecond between the two, Nehemiah invited God into the moment. He regulated his nervous system. He didn't just react to his fear. He actively grounded himself to access wisdom.
Okay, I have to push back a little bit on this, though.
Sure, go ahead.
Because if we're trying to apply this today, taking a pause to just pray and weep can sometimes feel like a massive cop-out. I mean, in our modern culture, when there's a horrible tragedy or a massive corporate layoff and leaders say, "We're sending our thoughts and prayers," people get furious.
Yeah, absolutely.
And rightfully so. If my friend comes to me and says they're being evicted and I say, "I'm weeping and praying for you," I haven't actually helped them at all. I've just kind of centered my own spiritual feelings.
That's a great point, and you're hitting on the exact danger of stopping at only emotional empathy. If empathy ends at weeping, it's basically just performative sympathy.
Right.
But the key distinction the sermon draws is that for Nehemiah, weeping and praying were not his only response. They were his first response. That Frankel space isn't a hiding place, It's a launch pad.
Well, I like that. A launch pad.
Yeah. By taking the time to process his devastating grief and seek that grounding, he prevented himself from rushing in with a half-baked, frantic solution. He cleared his mind so he could successfully pivot to the second dimension.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The emotion proves he cares. The grounding stops the blind panic, and that creates the runway for cognitive empathy. Because once that millisecond prayer is over, Nehemiah opens his mouth, and the logical planning that spills out is just staggering.
He essentially hands the king a masterclass in project management.
Right. When the king asks what he needs, Nehemiah doesn't just say, "Please, sir, my people are suffering, do something." He has a wildly specific logistical blueprint ready to deploy.
Yes.
He asks for a set timeline. He asks for letters of safe transit addressed specifically to the governors of the Trans-Euphrates region so he can cross international borders without being arrested. He even knows the exact supply chain. He tells the king, "I need a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, to give me timber to make beams for the gates."
What's fascinating here is how the cognitive work validates the emotional grief.
Ah,
Think about those 4 months he spent weeping and fasting.
yeah.
He wasn't just wallowing in pity, he was doing the math. He was literally visualizing the circumference of the ruined walls, estimating the cubic tonnage of timber required, identifying the political roadblocks he'd face on the journey. He translated his raw emotional pain into a concrete, executable strategy.
And what I absolutely love is that the reality testing of this cognitive empathy doesn't stop in the comfortable palace. I mean, he gets the letters, he makes his massive journey to Jerusalem, and when he finally arrives, he doesn't call a press conference.
No, he doesn't.
He rests. And then he takes this secret night patrol. He takes his horse and a few trusted guys, and they ride out into the rubble in the dead of night to inspect the broken walls.
Now, why do you think he kept it a secret? Like, why not bring the city leaders with him right away?
To me, that screams that a plan built in a comfortable palace office is completely useless until you've actually walked through the dirt yourself. Like, he didn't want to alert his political enemies, obviously, and he didn't want to start a premature panic among the citizens. He needed to physically verify his own assumptions. He had to touch the burnt stone and see if the brilliant blueprint in his head actually matched the catastrophic reality on the ground.
Exactly. Because cognitive empathy requires immense humility. It's the willingness to say, you know what, my theories might be completely wrong. Let me look at the granular, ugly details of your problem before I arrogantly tell you how to fix it.
So, he has the broken heart and he has the brilliant blueprint. But a blueprint is just a piece of paper. The final dimension is where most modern leadership completely falls apart. It's empathetic action, but more specifically, it's the sacrifice of privilege.
This is the real friction point. It is relatively easy to feel pity. It's harder, but honestly kind of intellectually satisfying to draft a strategy. But to actually execute that strategy without becoming a detached elite overseer, that requires bleeding with the community.
Right, because when Nehemiah finally addresses the people, his language shifts. He doesn't point at them and say, look at the mess you are in, luckily I am here to fix it. He says, you see the trouble we are in.
Yes, the we.
He instantly binds his own fate to theirs. But the true test of this solidarity happens a bit later, and it's not with the stone wall itself, but with the people inside it.
Yeah, while the construction is happening, a massive internal economic crisis detonates. There's a severe famine, and the taxes levied by the Persian Empire are exorbitant. So to survive, the poorer citizens are taking out loans, mortgaging their fields, their vineyards, their homes, literally just to buy grain.
And the cruelty is coming from inside the house. It's the wealthy nobles of their own community who are exploiting this crisis. The economic disparity gets so horrific that the poorer families are defaulting on their loans, and they're being forced to sell their own children into slavery to the rich elites just to keep from starving to death.
It is absolute systemic rot. And notice Nehemiah's mechanism of response here. He doesn't take the detached project manager route and say, listen, the wall is our key deliverable for Q3. Let's finish the construction phase and we'll circle back to macroeconomic policy in Q4.
No, he halts the entire project. He publicly convenes a great assembly and furiously rebukes the nobles and officials. He demands the immediate return of the fields, the vineyards, and the absolute cancellation of the predatory interest rates. He recognizes that building a stone perimeter around a society that eats its own children is utterly pointless.
But the mechanism of how he achieves this social justice is the most critical part of the transcript. He doesn't just legislate it from the top down. He dismantles the social hierarchy by weaponizing his own privilege.
Here's where it gets really interesting. As the Persian-appointed governor of Judah, Nehemiah was legally entitled to a massive salary and a lavish food allowance, entirely funded by the taxes of the local people. It was standard operating procedure for any governor in the empire.
It was his right. He had earned it. I mean, he was the one who secured the timber and the transit letters in the first place.
But he refuses to take a single dime of it. For 12 straight years, he declines the governor's food allowance and refuses the salary. He looks at the crushing economic weight on the community and decides he will not add a single ounce to it, even if he's legally entitled to do so.
And if we think about the underlying logic of that choice, it is profound. Why does giving up his salary stop the nobles from exploiting the poor? because by voluntarily lowering his own status, he destroyed the cultural hierarchy that justified the exploitation.
Wow, yeah.
He couldn't just tell the nobles to stop being greedy while he was eating prime rib on the taxpayer's dime. He had to completely strip himself of his elite immunity to prove that they were truly one body.
The analogy that comes to mind isn't just an undercover boss who pretends to be poor for a week for a reality TV show. It's more like a brilliant structural engineer who is called in to fix a collapsing bridge.
Okay, I'm tracking.
Cognitive empathy is drawing the schematics to fix the pillars. But empathetic action is the engineer walking down into the ravine, standing directly beneath the cracking concrete and using their own physical shoulders to help brace the weight while the repairs are made. If the bridge falls, they die with it. That is the sacrifice of privilege.
And that is the exact wisdom the speaker is trying to impart to those young adults in Austin. Empathy isn't a soft skill you just list at the bottom of your resume. It is a profound, often painful act of solidarity that demands personal cost.
Which is exactly why we need to bridge this historical gap right now.
Yeah.
Let's talk directly to you, the listener.
Yeah, let's bring it home.
Imagine you're a young adult navigating this current decade. The ruined walls in your life might not be made of ancient stone. Maybe your ruined wall is the sudden, terrifying realization that generative AI can do your entry-level coding job in 3 seconds, and you are staring down the barrel of obsolescence. Or maybe it's the quiet, crushing isolation of a broken relationship in a city where you barely know your neighbors. When the rubble is everywhere, how does this 2,500-year-old Persian cupbearer actually help you?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Nehemiah provides a sequential 3-step blueprint for navigating modern chaos. The very first step, before you do anything else, is to find your Frinkle space.
And what does that actually look like on a Tuesday morning when you get the layoff email?
It looks like aggressively resisting the amygdala hijack. When that email hits, or, when you see that painful post on social media, the stimulus demands an immediate reaction.
Yeah.
You want to fire off a furious Slack message, you want to doom scroll for 4 hours, or you want to instantly numb the pain.
Right, flight or fight.
Exactly. Don't stop. Create the micropause, whether that is through a silent prayer, breath work, or literally walking away from your phone. Use that space to let the emotional empathy happen. Feel the grief, but ground your nervous system so you don't burn down whatever bridges you have left.
You stabilize the core before you move the limbs.
Exactly. Step 2 is to engage the cognitive blueprint. Once you are grounded, you have to transition out of the grief. Do the math on your ruined walls. If your industry is pivoting, what specific skills do you actually need to learn? Who holds the modern equivalent of the king's timber in your network, and how do you draft a realistic timeline to reach them? Empathy for yourself means looking at your reality with cold, hard logic and making a plan based on the resources you actually possess, not the ones you wish you had.
You have to do the night patrol. You have to look honestly at your own resume, your own bank account, your own flaws, and measure the rubble without lying to yourself.
Yes. And finally, step 3, which is the ultimate antidote to the anxiety of our age. Do not isolate. In a hyper-competitive, algorithm-driven job market, the natural human instinct is sheer self-preservation. You want to hoard your resources, guard your contacts, and treat everyone else as a competitor for the few remaining lifeboats.
The classic, I got mine, good luck getting yours, survival mechanism.
But Nehemiah's life proves that true resilience is never individual. It is always communal. It means looking at your peers who are drowning in the exact same anxieties and actively deciding to share the burden.
Wow.
It means passing along a job, lead to a friend even when you need a job yourself. It means spending your Saturday helping someone else practice for an interview rather than optimizing your own LinkedIn profile for the 100th time. It is the willingness to sacrifice your own immediate comfort to reinforce the strength of the person standing next to you.
Because if the wall falls on them, it's eventually going to fall on you too.
Precisely.
So let's bring this all together. Empathy is not a monolith. It is the seamless integration of a heart that is willing to break and weep for reality, a mind that is disciplined enough to strategize a way out, and hands that are willing to sacrifice personal privilege to do the heavy lifting alongside the community.
It is the architecture of human survival.
So what does this all mean for you? The next time you or a friend are standing in the middle of a pile of life's rubble, I want you to ask yourself, which of these 3 dimensions am I missing? Are you paralyzed by weeping but lack a concrete plan? Do you have a brilliant spreadsheet of solutions but haven't actually stopped to validate the emotional pain? Or do you have the tears and the plan, but you are secretly refusing to sacrifice your own comfort to get your hands dirty?
We love the idea of empathy when it feels warm and validating, but if true empathy requires the literal surrender of our time, our money, or our status, like Nehemiah walking away from 12 years of salary to protect his neighbors, we have to ask ourselves a difficult question. Are we sometimes secretly avoiding true empathy, not because we don't care, but because we are absolutely terrified of what it might actually cost us?
That is an incredibly sharp thought to leave off on. We cannot outcompute the future, but we can outcare it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep seeking out the rubble, and we'll see you next time.